Okay, in this video in our professionalism series, I want to talk to you about addressing others as part of a conversation. Okay, so to start with, the scenario is you meet someone new or someone who you have less than familiar level of acquaintance with, and you start the conversation. Do you use their first name, that is, hi Jason, or do you say Mr. Gordon? Right, that type of thing, or whatever their salutation is, Dr. Gordon, that type of thing. So with that being said, generally this is a question of familiarity. If someone has introduced themselves and they have invited you, they've used your first name or they have invited you to use their first name, do so. Don't go backwards, because what they're doing is inviting you in, they're showing they're comfortable with you, and they're expressing some desire to create a level of fit or, once again, comfort with you. To back up and then begin using someone's last name, Mr. Gordon, once they've said, no, just call me Jason. Well, in that scenario, you are taking the step of alienating yourself from them. And again, that doesn't have a positive effect. Okay, so with that being said, once again, conform to the level of what the other person expects. And once again, if you're in the social status, someone is being introduced to you, once again, you have that opportunity of making decision whether you say, call me Jason, or whether you allow them to use your last name. Because the default is you start by using someone's last name, being Mr. Gordon, Miss Smith, that type of thing. Okay? Now, when someone introduces themselves to you, make certain to take special or pay special attention to their name. We oftentimes are thinking so diligently about what we're going to say in response to the other person's introduction that we forget or don't commit to memory their name, and we ultimately have to ask it again later in the conversation. Well, that's a negative thing. All right, there are several techniques you can use to attempt to remember somebody's name, whether it's creating some memory key by associating their name with someone else, right, who has a similar name type thing, or repeating their name back to them, or making a rhyme in your head immediately with their name. All of these things are very effective for helping you in remembering someone's name. Okay, but I can tell you it is a very positive showing or a very, very positive demonstration to be able to recall somebody's name, particularly their entire name, throughout the conversation and afterwards. Okay, so that being said, if you need to somehow write down or record somebody's name after a conversation and something about them to remember them, that's a very professional thing to do as well. Okay, so now if somebody has a very difficult or uncommon name, it is okay in the scenario to ask them to pronounce it for you again and try to repeat it back, and apologize if you don't do it well, recognizing your limited exposure to their name or similar names from whatever culture from which they come, that type of thing. Okay, so but it is important, once again, to identify someone's name and commit it to memory, even if it is a difficult name. And in that scenario, using a rhyming type scenario could be the way to go. All right, using sir or ma'am when you address or respond to someone, saying yes sir, yes ma'am, that type of thing. Now, that's generally seen as very positive manners, particularly for children, okay? But in a way, it can be sometimes negatively perceived in different regions of the country. It's always positively received in the southeast of the United States, at least, but generally the south of the United States. In other areas, it's less commonly used, right? In the southeast, sometimes it's expected, particularly if it's a scenario where you're addressing someone who's older or of a higher echelon professionally, I suppose, than you are in that scenario. But generally older people, you say yes sir or yes ma'am, and it's expected and sometimes perceived as rude if you don't. The reverse could be true, like I say, in the northeast of the United States, where people prefer not to be called sir or ma'am often, because once again it does something to kind of formalize the relationship or alienate them from you, where that's somewhat more expected in the Southeast. So just know the area that you're in, and as we talk about in other videos about communications, knowing your audience is critical. So to the extent you can find something like that out about someone ahead of time, or watch how they interact with others, that type of thing. And it's never a bad thing to default immediately to say yes sir, yes ma'am to someone in response to them. Okay, gender etiquette, that is something that has become of increasing import in recent years. The aspect of making someone feel comfortable and not in a way assuming the gender pronouns with which they would prefer to be referred. And oftentimes you can't know that in advance. If you do have any reason at all to question that ahead of time, it is a professional thing to do, to ask someone else to somehow do the research and find out how that person likes to be referred to in terms of gender pronoun. Him, her, his, that type of thing, right? Oftentimes people put it in their emails now to identify how they prefer to be addressed with in terms of gender-specific pronouns. Okay, so that's not just for emails and letters. It is also for present conversation. So it's something to be aware of to make someone feel included and not to alienate someone in that way. Okay, again, the key aspect there is treating others with respect when you address them. Okay. And that can include things like your tone and how you address them, whether you address them in a fashion that's abrupt or interrupting, that type of thing. If you are addressing someone, paying attention to them, being engaged, making eye contact. Nothing is worse than surfing the room around someone to look for someone else. They perceive that you're looking for someone else more interesting or more important to talk to, and that creates an incredibly negative impression. So avoiding doing that is a very, very important thing. So once again, just focus on the aspect of how would you want to be treated in terms of engagement, attention, respect, that type of thing when you're addressing someone else. And then lastly, if you're involved in the conversation, how do you, in a very professional way, break away from the conversation, either because the conversation is coming to an end, or there's something calling you away, or the other person and you realize it, that type of thing. If something you realize is calling the other person away, it is a very professional thing to do, to give them the option. Like, I understand you have some other people to talk to. I don't want to monopolize your time all night, that type of thing. If you need to break away, just wait for a pause in the conversation. Identify, it has been a pleasure to speak with you. That's a very interesting point of view you have, that type of thing. But then say, I hate to do it, but I have to go speak with some other people, or I have a prior engagement, or I have a pressing issue I have to talk about with others, that type of thing. Just want to say thank you again for your time in speaking with you, extending your hand, trying to shake hands with them, that type of thing. Let them know you would love to speak with them further in the future. Please feel free to reach out to me or connect with me on LinkedIn. Here's my business card if you need anything, that type of thing. Practicing how to break away from the conversation professionally, making the other person still feel respected, valued in the conversation, that type of thing. Once again, it takes respect, but if you work at it diligently, once again, it will do wonders to develop your professional brand.